everybody. Okay, today I am here with Sheevani Desai, who I have known for several years. We're going to do a little something different today. The way that I met Sheevani was actually through my daughter. She is Eva's second mother, if you will. Because Eva is in the acting world, and Sheevani has actually played Eva's mother twice in two different programs. One was a pilot that was locally filmed here, and the other was a training video for the Air Force. But our paths have crossed quite a bit in Denver, and I invited her to come on here and talk to us about some of the things that she does. She is extremely creative and has lots of different mediums for her creativity, and I thought you would enjoy learning about this. So Sheevani, tell us a little bit about yourself. Tell us about how you got into the acting world, as well as blogging and podcasts and all that good stuff, and how you balance that as a mother.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for having me, Hillary. It's so great. I know I'm so honored to be Eva's second mom twice. I remember we came on set for that training video, and I was like, "Oh my goodness, this is
amazing." I know. We all kind of look alike, so
exactly. I was like, "Well, I feel honored to be Eva's mom twice over." So, yeah. So with my creativity, it's just something that I've always had. It's always been my strong suit since I was a little kid, and I was just drawn to performing. I was drawn to watching performers, everything about it. I was just that was like, for lack of a better term, my calling, right? And I spent a lot of time kind of suppressing that, and out of fear, saying, well, that's not practical. I know I love it. I know I really want to do it. I dedicated so much time during, my younger years, being in school and drama club, and then on the side doing Indian dancing and Indian dramas on stage and stuff like that. But as soon as I graduated high school, it seemed very scary to pursue it further. Right. And my parents were Indian immigrants. And so in their mind, a career in acting just wasn't practical, right? And they came to this country to provide a better life for their kids, and to do something as risky as acting. And that's not even, I'm sure that's not even true for just immigrant parents. I think every parent, it would be scary if your kid comes in, it's like, I'm going to be an actor, but whatever. But no, I felt all of that so much, and I didn't want to disappoint my parents. And being in that Indian community, I was surrounded by these very overachieving peers, and I always felt like that outsider, going, oh, gosh, I just wish I was really good at math and science so I could just be a doctor and make my parents happy. But so it was just one of those things where I suppressed it for years. I did the right thing. I went to college. I got a corporate job. I worked in that for many years. I got married. I had kids. And in my 20s, I started just kind of saying, okay, let me try it on the side. Mm-hmm. I got headshots taken. I did end up getting representation. This was back when I lived in the Detroit area. And so, because it never went away, and that love for that never went away. And to be quite honest, my work ethic in the corporate world just wasn't, I felt like an alien there. I was like, why are people so excited about this stuff? Like they're not even on a movie set. So it was just one of those journeys where as soon as I turned 40, I gave myself the permission to just pursue what I wanted to pursue. And I should backtrack a little bit, because after I had my daughter Faye, mm-hmm. I was 32, and I working in the corporate world. I did everything I should do. And after I had my daughter, I just had this kind of feeling like, you know what? I don't want my kids to see their mom settling for a life she really doesn't want. and I just knew that would permeate in everything else. If I was living this life in the corporate world and trying to just climb this ladder that I thought I should be climbing versus what my real passions were, that would affect everything. It would affect the way I treated my kids, my husband. It would just, I know myself to know I would regret it. And so that's when I started doing improv classes. I loved acting, but I always had an affinity to comedy, and I loved making people laugh. Just growing up, I was the funny friend, and I loved everything about comedy. I studied it, not knowing I was studying. I just watched a lot of comedy and was super drawn to that. And that first improv class, I'll never forget. It was just like the intro class, and we had to do an exercise at the top of the class, and it was like right in that moment. It was in this little classroom in Michigan, and I just felt that, like, okay, all right, this is it. This is great. This is the creative outlet I need, while still having a family and having my corporate job. I thought, okay, I can juggle this. And having a very supportive husband, I should mention, was a huge part of that. He's a musician who is now a corporate guy. So when we first met, he was in a band and pursuing that whole life, and he sort of gave that up and then pursued his business stuff. But so he's a creative, and so he knows what that means to let that part out. And yeah, so the improv thing just kept building. I just loved it. I kept going to as much as I could with a family. I would go to shows. I would just try and get to know the people there, the other performers. I would audition for every sketch show that they had there. I kept my education going. I had my second kid in the middle of my improv training. And and honestly, yes, the sleepless nights and the breastfeeding and all that stuff was hard, but like I had to miss a term of my improv class, and that was almost just as hard as all the other stuff that goes along with the newborn. It's because it was just this passion, and I really felt like it was something I could do well. My corporate life, I was okay, and it was, and no matter how hard I tried, I would never really shine in that world because I didn't feel the passion for it. So I felt like I was on this path to do something I could really, really be good at. And so, yeah, I mean, I've been doing that steadily, moving from Detroit to Denver for almost 4 years ago. It was tough in a lot of ways, but leaving my improv family, I had by that point I was a part of the resident company at the theater where I trained. I had been doing sketch shows. I'd started writing shows, so I was on the track to start teaching classes. So it's like I'd built that up.
Yeah.
But fortunately, the Denver community is also thriving, and it actually reminds me a lot of the Detroit community. So yeah, we got here, and I'm like, okay, I'm going to keep doing this. I got representation with Radical Artists, which was great. And I left my corporate world behind and said, okay, I'm going to pursue this full time. Plus, my husband's career is very demanding, a lot of travel, a lot of responsibility. And so I just thought, okay, if I can just kind of have this other career that I can define what my hours are, what I really want to do, and kind of steer it in a certain way. I'm going to do that. I'm really lucky that I can do that. And yeah, so it's just been this journey of like creativity where, and it's ups and downs. I had representation. I'd go on auditions. I wouldn't book things, and then every now and then I'd book something, and then I felt very stilted even in this world because it just depended on whether or not a casting director or a client liked me. And it's so, and you know this, Hillary, but it can just be one little thing. They love your performance, but the actor playing opposite you has brown hair, so they need someone, it's like sometimes the decision making is so these minute details. And I really learned that when I was casting shows back in Detroit for sketch and stuff like that, where it was like, oh my gosh, if these actors only knew that we thought they were perfect for everything, but oh my gosh, they just you know, we need a representation of something else physically or
Right.
something like that. You know, there's just so many things. And so even though had representation and I was auditioning quite a bit, booking here and there was still this pent up creative energy. And this is going to sound really weird, but I love podcasts. And I was listening to a podcast called, shoot, I'm not going to remember it, but it's Sam Jones. Okay, you can cut this part out. It's a podcast I listened to. Shoot, I forgot the name of it. Anyway, Matt Damon was being interviewed, and he was talking about when they wrote Good Will Hunting. And the big reason that he and Ben Affleck wrote that was because at that time in Hollywood, they were one of like thousands of typical white men, boys, you know, that age, whatever. And they were like, we were a dime a dozen. It didn't matter how talented we were. There were people far more talented than us that weren't getting these roles. And I think they lost out. I think Matt Damon had lost out one of the major roles in School Ties. Remember that movie? School Ties. And then he got so close, and then he didn't end up getting it. And I think it was School Ties. But anyway, so he and Ben Affleck were like, you know what? We're never going to get anything big unless we write it ourselves.
Right.
And that just stuck with me going, oh my gosh, yes. Why am I waiting for this perfect role? Why don't I create something that I fit really well into, whether it's a role or a blog or a podcast? So that's what kind of led me to my blog, honestly. I had turned 40. I was feeling very stilted in many ways, but one thing I knew about myself throughout my life is that writing was something that helped me so much and that I enjoyed doing. And I was encouraged to do it, but yet that was another thing where I was like, no, I should go to college and get a job in numbers. Like it made no sense. But so I just wrote, I had this thought about the first blog post I did, which was called The Reluctant Stay-at-Home Mom.
So Sheevani, when you talked about turning 40 and the fact that you wanted to kind of find your passion and be a role model for your kids, that really sent shivers through me because there are so many women who kind of, even like me, who had children and then stopped working or just scaled back. And then when your children start getting a little bit older and you start thinking about what am I going to do, you're at this juncture where do I go back to where I was? Is it too late for me to start something new? And what I love about what you said is that you decided that you were going to go back to the passion that you've always had and try to make that work. And that is a message that is just so important for all of us to hear, that it's never too late to go back. And not only did you kind of delve into the acting, at which you've been very successful, and you talked about kind of the casting directors. And I remember that when we did the training video, when Eva did it with you, I remember one of the directors saying, if one of you could not have made it today, none of you would have been able to be cast, because they had put together the perfect family. And if one person couldn't be part of that perfect family, they were going to have to pick a whole other different family, which had nothing to do with any of your talents or your skills. It just had to do with the look. Yep. So that's really interesting. And it's such an important thing to point out to prospective actors or people following their passions, because oftentimes it's not personal. So anyway, back to you. So I want you to tell us, because not only the acting stuff, you've been really successful, you're modest about it, I know, but you book a lot of commercials and a lot of gigs. And, but you also find ways, as you said, to have outlets for your creativity when you're not working, through your blog and now this podcast about one of my favorite shows, Seinfeld. And I'm like you mentioned, and I think the latest episode, that you put Seinfeld on when you're cooking. Whenever I'm not feeling good or I'm feeling a little down, I put on Seinfeld because it makes me feel better. So tell us a little bit more about the blog and the podcast.
Totally, yes. So the blog really just came out of the best way I can describe it was just I just felt this push. I turned 40. I just wanted to do something on a consistent basis that would let my creativity out, because acting, it's like, okay, you book something and then you don't book anything for 4 weeks, and then you book, so it's like it's not very consistent. And so I've always loved writing. I was always encouraged to write. I didn't do it, but and I didn't have any. And the best part about it, and I think this is why I enjoy it a lot, is because I didn't go into it with any agenda. I wasn't going like, this is going to be the biggest blog. Oh my gosh, it's going to set the blog world on fire. I mean, I really was just like, I'm going to write stuff that is important to me, or that the stuff that I'm going through. I'll share it. Hey, if it connects with someone else, that's great. And if I get 1 or 2 views a day, okay, whatever,
Yeah.
it was with no agenda. It wasn't saying, I wasn't trying to make some statement with it. It really was kind of selfishly, I need to get these thoughts out. And with that first blog post, which was called The Reluctant Stay-at-Home Mom, I felt really passionate about those thoughts, because when I decided to leave the corporate world and stay home with my kids, it was not easy. And I have to say, it was because I was so worried about the perception from other women, other people, but a lot of times other women. My peers before that were all working moms, or working women. And so, and unfortunately, there was some negative stereotypes about stay-at-home moms portrayed, in media, honestly, it's just the eating the bonbons and staying home and being like these, I don't know. It was just, there's not, I don't think, a very positive image of stay-at-home moms at all.
Right.
And so I felt all of that. And I was, my new peers as stay-at-home mom, that I'd met just in my neighborhood at the gym, they were all former like total powerhouses from the corporate world. They had achieved a lot. They all had degrees. Some of them had advanced degrees, but they just made their decision to stay at home with their family for a myriad of reasons. It wasn't one kind of cookie cutter thing. And so all the discussions I'd had with them, I said, there's something here. And I just want to get these thoughts out going. I'm not very comfortable saying I'm a stay-at-home mom, but let's see why that is. I'm not saying I made the wrong decision. I'm not saying I can't wait to not be a stay-at-home mom once my kids go to school or any of that. In fact, I wrote it when my youngest was starting kindergarten, or at least daycare or something, or preschool. So I would have more time to myself. And so that number one question is, oh, are you just going to go back to work now? I mean, it was a number one question from everyone. And I was like, there's no way I can go back to the corporate world. I just can't. It brought nothing to my life. So it was, that first post felt so good to get out. And I got such a great reaction from so many people. I even got reaction from stay-at-home dads who, oh my gosh, they had such a whole other, set of issues, or not issues, but just a whole set of stuff that they went through too. Yeah. And it just snowballed from there. It was like every week I would kind of get another thought or other things that it's been bubbling under the surface that I wanted to write about. And I kept it consistent for a long time. I was like, every single week I did a lot of research, like, what do you do with a blog, and how should you kind of execute being a blogger? And it was so much fun. It felt so good. It was scary, but I needed that. I needed to scare myself and jump into that deep end, because I had spent too much time in this safe world I created because I was too scared to take a chance on myself. So.
Right. So then what led to Elaine?
Oh my gosh. So this was just purely, I started doing the blog, and I think once you start doing creative things,
Mm-hmm.
really just, like I said, snowballs into different areas. Once you conquer something maybe that you were afraid to do. I mean, just like even with the blog, it's kind of like, well, how do I publish it? What do I need to do? And oh my God, editing it. And
Right.
just like even the technical stuff, all hurdles that you have to just get over and get through in order to get it done. I love, well, first of all, I love podcasts.
Yes.
I got into them a few years ago, and I was listening to a Signcast. It's called Signcast, another podcast, and it was just one of those things where I felt like I don't think they discuss Elaine Bennis enough in these episodes. And
Okay.
besides that, Julia Louis Dreyfus has been such an integral part of my comedic upbringing. I mentioned in the blog, in the podcast, which one? I mentioned in the podcast how I started watching this at like 12 or 13. I started watching Seinfeld on a regular basis. And I didn't know it at the time, but I was getting this education and like studying what Julia Louis Dreyfus brought to this character. First of all, such a different character for that time period, and how we saw females in sitcoms, and just getting older and pursuing some comedy and acting in general. You really appreciate what a trailblazer she was.
Yeah.
She is by far one of my biggest comedic influences. I love how she brings in the femininity, but that also will just make herself look like an idiot no matter what, for the sake of the work and the comedy, to make it work. She doesn't care if she looks like an idiot. She's doing that thing to get the laugh. And that's kind of always been my approach since I was little. I used to do an impression of this kid who always fell off his chair in my second grade class, and I would do it for my brother after school because he would laugh. I would get hurt. I'd get bruises from doing this. It was very embellished. He'd just fall off his chair, but I would make it into this big theatrical thing. My brother would be laughing so hard. And there was nothing like that to me. It was just, that is that, and
That's awesome.
so I felt like I could really connect with her on that. She just threw all caution to the wind, didn't care how she looked, didn't care about what, the focus on being glamorous or feminine. She's just naturally, like that and charming. So that commitment to the comedy is really what drew me to her. So yeah, this podcast has been great. I'm like, I'm
Yeah,
such
awesome. It's bringing the spotlight to Elaine and all that she brings to her performance. It's awesome.
I was so surprised that there wasn't already a podcast like this. There is a similar one, but it's more about the casual feminism of Elaine, which is cool, which is
Right.
awesome, but there's not one that's kind of like an episode by episode. Let's just focus on her storyline. Let's just focus on what she brought to this episode or wasn't given by the writers in this episode, which is a big thing in the early episodes. It's so fun to kind of dive into that, because I also like to talk about the evolution of how females have been written
Right.
in television since then and at that point, and what she had to deal with behind the scenes and stuff like that. So, oh gosh, I love it. It's so much fun.
It is super fun, and I hope that she gets to see it. I feel like emailing her and saying, you've got to go watch this because it's so awesome.
Oh, that is the ultimate dream. One day, hopefully, she will be a guest on
Yes,
the Elaine Bennis podcast.
that would be awesome. And I am going to link to it. What is it called again? Tell us.
Yeah, it's called Hot and Heavy, the Elaine Bennis podcast.
Yes.
So,
yes. Well, it is hot and heavy, and I love it. And I think you're doing a great job. So just to bring everything, I'm just so happy you're here, and the conversation has been just really, it's hit me on a lot of different points, because, I'm doing this blog and I'm kind of a creative person, and just listening to you is so inspiring. So for all of us out there who, may or may not want to follow kind of their creativity to blogging or podcasting or even acting, because there are lots of opportunities in acting, whether it's local theater or maybe doing commercials or whatever. What is your advice for kind of women that are in their 40s or early 50s or even 60s who might want to try to get their foot in the door in any of these different mediums?
My advice is to, and I mentioned it earlier, to first off, give yourself the permission to do it.
Okay.
Because if you're anything like me, and I think it's very common, you are your number one detractor a lot of times. You will talk yourself out of this stuff more than other people will. So it was once I changed my mindset about giving myself the permission to pursue something that's not traditional, uh, and not feel shamed for it or not care
Mhm.
what other people thought. That's the first step, really, to get over your own voices in your head that are telling you, I'm too old, this will be too hard, oh, there's a ton of other people like that out there that are better than me probably, or no one wants to see me or hear what I have to think. Just get all that out of the way.
Okay.
And then just research. There's so much out there. I just got representation through our mutual friend Marty, because
Oh,
I did his pilot. I wasn't represented when I did that pilot, so I
okay.
I think it helped a lot because Marty has such a great reputation in Denver. But and keep doing, and I was lucky. I got representation right away. I know people have struggled, but
Right.
if you don't have representation, there are ways to look up auditions locally. You don't have to have representation to get auditions. Um, and go to, if it is comedy, take classes, take workshops. The people you will meet, you will get opportunities just through that. If it's writing or podcasting, there are tools everywhere. I would just say dedicate the time and make sure you do your research. And most of all, believe. It's so cliche, but it's so important. You just believe in yourself. Just believe you can do it, and don't go into it thinking you're going to set the world on fire with it. Just go into it for the sake of your passion, if that makes sense.
Yes, that's great. That's great advice. And I'm going to learn from that. I feel good just listening to you talk about it. So, well, Shivani, I wish you all the luck, and I'm encouraging everyone to go read your blog, listen to your podcast, and cheer you on from the sidelines, because I can see you being a series regular one day, just like Julia and Seinfeld.
I hope
That
so.
would be so awesome. And I just thank you for coming on and sharing your story with us.
Oh, thank you so much. And applause to you for putting this out there. These conversations are so important. I think we are changing the landscape of what is expected of women, especially after a certain age. Let's not have it be so narrow. Let's make sure that it's a wide path for all
Yeah,
of us, no matter what we want to do. So great job. Thank you for doing.
yes, of course. And I hope that I will see you soon again as Eva's mom somewhere.
Yes, always available.
All right, take care,
Great.
Shivani.
Thank you.
Okay, bye-bye.